Good morning. We will call the the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of Wednesday, May 19, 2021 to order. Let the record show that we have two absent members, Mr. Cordnoy and Mr. Bullinger. First item on our agenda this morning is the order of business. Mr. Hadley, is there any changes or corrections to the order of business?
Mr. Chairman, there is not. Thank you.
Okay, hearing no changes. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Hadley? If not, I'd look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 2 is the minutes of our previous session, which was April 21st, 2021. Any corrections to the minutes or clarifications? If not, I'd look for a motion to approve those.
So moved.
A couple of, on the voting, it doesn't have the numbers in them on the three places, on motions. There's no, the 7-0 on it, and I'd also on the special use permit for that over by the intersection, that's a 64 interchange instead of 94.
Good catch.
We catching that over there? Okay. All right. Mr. Bush, would you like to amend your motion with those corrections?
I would.
All right.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to amend some comments in the minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will move on to our action items this morning. On our agenda, our first one that we will hear is a final plat. This is to consider a preliminary final plat, FLP-003-21, for the Geraldine Addition, replat of the Humphrey Addition. The site is located in the west half, southwest quarter of Section 28, Township 140 North, Range 96 West of the 5th Principal Meridian, City of Dickinson, Stark County, North Dakota. The site will consist of 3 rural residential lots on approximately 11.73 acres across the street from the Public Safety Center on State Avenue in Dickinson. Mr. Hadley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item has been discussed for quite some time. The applicant is bringing home.
Hot mic.
If that's me or not. That sounds good, huh? Anyway, this is a request that we've been working on with staff for a number of months. It basically is a replat of the Humphrey Addition to bring children home, which is what we embrace as a community. I mean, we really truly want to see this. I believe the applicant is here. We have worked through a lot of the details for a number of months, and I believe that staff and the applicant have come to terms that will work not only for him, but also for the health, safety, and welfare of his family, and then also anyone else that purchases those in the future. So with that, there's a number of conditions, 8 conditions that go along with this. There will be a development agreement and a 3-party agreement on the construction of the public infrastructure that's required for this. And with that, I believe the applicant is aware of that. I think with that, I haven't heard any comments from the public on this request to date. The applicant is here, and if he has anything he wants to add or any questions on that, he's welcome to. So at this time, I guess I'd ask for that, and it is a public hearing.
Good morning, Mr. Kubis.
Good morning.
Can you state your name for the record?
Dean Kubis.
Did you have anything you wanted to add, or any
No.
questions or concerns?
No, I'm fine with everything. I just want to make room for the kids, that's all.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Kubis? All right, thank you. All right. And it looks like all the documents are included in our packet. Commissioners, what are your wishes? Oh, first of all, I guess we need to have a public hearing. Let's start there. All right, we will open the public hearing for this final plot request. Anybody in the public or online at 456-7006, please come forward and list your concerns or questions. Let's forget to dial 9 first.
The conference is currently empty. You will hear silence or music on hold when connected.
Anybody in the public or online watching have any comments or concerns regarding this final plat request? Please come forward. One more time, anybody in the public or online have any comments or concerns regarding this plat request? All right, seeing or hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners, any comments, concerns, questions before we take action? Hearing none, I'd look for a motion, I guess.
I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of FLP-006-21, Geraldine Addition Final Plot as depicted in Attachment A and meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Bush, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we will move on to item 4 on our agenda this morning. Public issues of city concern not on the agenda. If there's anybody online or in the public that has anything that they'd like to bring up to the commission at this time, please step forward or give us a call at 456-7006.
The conference is currently empty. You will hear silence or music on hold when connected.
Anyone in the public have any public issues of city concern that are not on our agenda this morning, please come forward. All right, seeing or hearing none, we will close that section of our meeting. Move on to item 5 this morning. Items not on the agenda. Any commissioners have anything that they'd like to bring up this morning that's not on our agenda for discussion? I'm all talk at once now.
Been pretty quiet.
All right, hearing or seeing none there either, we will close item 5 out and move into our non-action item section of our agenda this morning. Our work session items, the first item is an introduction to our comprehensive plan update. City County Planner Josephson looks like is in charge of that.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Friedrich. Commissioners, good morning. Steve Josephson. You have in front of you a memo addressing the review and update of the comprehensive plan. This was a task that City Administrator Whittingham had requested that the planning department undertake. Just to let you know, there are 2 portions. The city did receive a grant to help finance part of this update. 2 portions of it, Chapter 8 and Chapter 11. Chapter 8, which is city services, and Chapter 11 implementation, are going to be the city will be working with KLJ on that update. Planning Director Hadley probably has more information about that than I do. I just wanted to cover the rest of what we're looking at. There's a schedule in front of you. What we're hoping to is by the end of June is to do a complete review of the capital improvements set chapter and determine which projects in the capital improvements portion have actually been completed, and staff is working with engineering on that, hoping by the end of August to have a complete review of objectives and policies in each of the other comprehensive plan chapters and determine whether or not they've been met. Staff has been looking at the land use and the housing portion of it, so this is underway. And then by September 21st is to do a complete review of the future land use map amendments, show the locations of any changes to the future land use map, and provide explanations as to why those were done. There's also a portion to Appendix B, which were recommendations for changes to the zoning ordinance, that we would review that and come back with statement of how those whether or not those recommendations have been met. A major portion of this project is going to be updating the data in there. At the time that this was done, and this was adopted in 2013, and at the time this was done, the oil boom was on, and I remember coming here and seeing what it was like. A lot of the data that was in there was based upon projections that they factored in, potential employment from oil production, if oil production was going to continue at the rate that it did. One of the projections they had was that the city of Dickinson would have a population of over 40,000 people by the year 2020. Census data, census estimates have listed the population here at more like 23,000. That's based on the 2010 census. What we can do is we can either wait on the 2020 census information, and we're not quite sure when that's going to be coming out this year, or we can take some of those tables and update them and use the most recent information as a placeholder, just to show what was, what happened at the time of plan adoption, what was predicted, and compare that at least to the best available figures that we have right now. Have also started asking for information on existing land use, valuation of properties and vacant land and so on. That's information that's internal that we can get from engineering and also from the appraiser's office. There'll be other information we're looking at in infrastructure. There were a number of projections in there about potable water use and wastewater treatment and the urban service area. Analyzing what was projected then and then looking at what's actually, what potable water was actually used and what water was, wastewater has been completed. The comment I would make about the comprehensive plan is it's a wonderful document in terms of an inventory of city facilities. I don't know if anything like that on that scale had been done before. The intent of this is not to update all that entire listing of city facilities, but to show what, how well the policies that were adopted in it have worked, and then where we are at. Every comprehensive plan is a snapshot in time, and this would show, well, maybe they predicted 40,000 people in 2020, but the reality was this, so, and that can better help the city as it reviews the policies and decides whether to adopt different policies and take a different direction, go in different directions than what the comprehensive plan had recommended. And that's the thing, is after we are able to look at how well the policies worked and looked at data, then we can start having some serious discussions about those policies and what direction, what growth direction the city wants to go in. We've also met with Parks and Rec. I met with them. They're looking over their portion of it and will give us an update. They are going to provide. They said they would provide us some information on that by the end of the month. Apparently, they've added a number of trails and parkland since the time that the comprehensive plan was adopted. The link that you got has the different comprehensive plan components to it. The one that has all the comprehensive plan, the transportation master plan, the appendices portion in the West Dickinson plan. Please review those as we go through the process. But it's available. It's available now to everyone to look at. It's at your fingertips, and that's. I'd say back in 2016, we did have We did have a briefing. It was an update that was made to the incoming city commission. It wasn't as comprehensive as what staff is looking at to do now. I think the big thing is going to see is where we are in terms of our population and development since the comprehensive plan was adopted. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Joseph, the flume is the biggest thing for me. I mean, I don't want us to go through this and then have requests every month to change the comprehensive plan. So we need to figure out if we have to talk to some of these landowners, what their thoughts are for developing their property in the future, or, I mean, I think we need to have some very open conversation. I mean, to do all this and then we change the flume every 2 months makes no sense to me.
This is an opportunity to look at the future land use map and say, well, back in 13, we thought growth was going to develop like this. You know, now we're looking at what our actual growth is. And, you know, maybe the policy now is instead of, there was a lot of push towards developing greenfields, new areas, you know, and perhaps the direction now would be, you know, infill. You know, we have a lot of areas in the city that they're in city limits that have services that need to, that probably are the logical place. But I think that's going to be part of it. Chairman Friedrich is when we're done with this is looking at revising that and other policies.
Yeah, and then, you know, we need to have a hard discussion probably with the city commission on some of this land we've annexed, if that's something we're going to keep in our city, or if we're going to look at, I mean, there's some stuff that's on the outskirts that we brought in that probably won't get developed now for, maybe not in my lifetime, who knows?
Yeah.
So,
We are removing a couple of those in the next couple of months. By going through the process.
and then, do we set up a timeline to review this? You know, as a policy that every 5 years we maybe look at this, or?
We were supposed, you know, it was in the plan, and I'm going to let Planning Director Hadley address that.
Yeah, it's, the goal is to review it every 5 years, but you can review it prior to that if you have changes. But with our staffing, it's a little tough to do where we are, so that's why it was great to get KLJ on board. We can pick up some of the pieces, and then they can do some of the lifting with the work that we're going to move forward on. So no, every 5 years is a good normal time.
And I believe that since then, we've had a public transportation study that has been done for Dickinson. Are we going to try to add that in here?
I believe we can add parts of it in there, yes.
Because I know we had that done 2-3 years ago probably, so.
You know, there have been a number, and we'll try to find out if there are other studies that have been done, you know, that would be reflected in objectives and policies in the comprehensive plan.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Anybody else have anything, or?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Hadley. About a year ago, we had like 1,000 lots available. Do you know where we're at about now?
I just wrote it down. I would say 900 plus. We haven't done an official one yet, just because it is pretty intensive to do. We will do as part of this comp plan update, so it's a snapshot in time for when we're reviewing and doing this update for the comp plan. We'll have an idea of this is how many lots, and then that would coincide with the future land use and then our annexation policy in the future. So
Okay.
it is something on the radar. We
Yeah.
probably have 250 commercial lots, is my estimation right now.
Yeah, Commissioner Dukart, I didn't have that, I don't think I had that by memo, but that's definitely something that's going to influence, you know, that's going to influence the direction of the, you know, growth in the city. Fortunately, you know, we've been working with engineering, and they've been keeping an inventory of, you know, a vacant lot inventory. And I think also they have in there what kind of services are available and how far the services come up to the vacant lots. So, but yeah, that's going to be part of this. That's going to be part of this study.
Well, I had a builder that said we should have a moratorium on lots. I said, well, people have to have choices too. You know, if they don't want to live in a certain area, they're not going to build a home there. So I don't know. But I did explain to him that we do have a lot of lots available.
I think keeping it to the lots we can service with the infrastructure we've already put in is probably the key now without us expending any more money. The mayor's going to give a State of the City address, and we've expended $306 million in public infrastructure in the last decade or so, roughly. So that's a lot for our size community. So we should utilize it, I guess.
All right. Commissioners, anything else to add or questions?
If you have any comments, questions, or things that you'd like us to specifically look at, please feel free to reach out to myself or Steve, too. And this is going to be a process. Not like the first time around, but it'll be a process.
Sure. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Nothing else. We'll move on to the item 2 on our work session. Introduction to small-scale wireless zoning code amendment. Mr. Hadley, Mr. Josephson, sorry.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Friedrich, Commissioners. Planning Director Hadley had asked me to look into this. Apparently, the city had been approached by, I guess it was a consulting firm, to talk about this. And I got to tell you, this is something that was new on my radar, but apparently has been out there for a while, and cities across the country have been addressing this. So let me go ahead and do this. There's a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm hoping I'm doing this right.
Is it on the side?
So what we have been, you're used to and what we've been dealing with have been traditional telecommunications facilities, cell towers, which here in the city of Dickinson requires that a special use permit. And as you can see, Chapter 39 defines them as a structure situated on a non-residential site that transmits or receives television, radio, or telephone communications. And it's a special use in most zoning districts. And you're familiar with the kinds that have come up here, your monopoles, your lattice, your guide wire ones. These are some examples of stealth ones. I don't know how many stealth ones we've done here. I think the one at the Parks Department is probably the one big stealth one we have, but these are some examples. Let's talk about small-scale wireless facilities. We've all heard about 4G and 5G transmission. Those require a different type of facility, and these are smaller. They tend to be about the size of a pizza box or a backpack. So they're lower power cell sites. They transmit data to and from wireless devices using mid and high band spectrums. The coverage is much more limited. The traditional cell towers, you're talking about miles. This is like 300 to 1,500 feet. They're being used to boost 5G network capacity, high density in placement. They're placed blocks apart. They are typically, a lot of them are placed on street lights, sides of buildings, or poles, and this is going to be the heart of the issue. We'll get to that in a moment. And the height is typically 25 to 45 feet. And these are, this is a illustration of what these small cell wireless facilities can look like. And then how they're placed on street lights and utility poles. There's a couple more examples of that. But then in some cases, they can also be placed on buildings, and this is what they would look like. And as I said, they tend to be concentrated. They tend to be concentrated in in small areas. The Federal Communications Commission overall regulates, cell towers and cellular communication in this country. And they came up with some rules that survived a couple of court cases as to, the response of local governments to when communication companies want to place small cell facilities. The city has 60 days to review and process applications if they're going to be located on an existing facility. If they're going to build a new structure, the city has 90 days to review and process. And from what my understanding is, that I believe that that's outside of, if it's a special use, I believe it's outside of that process. The city has 10 days to determine if an application is complete. Permit application fees were limited to $500 for up to five small cells, and then if they want to do more than that in the application, it's an additional $100. The permit application fee for placement on a new pole is limited to $1,000. There's an annual fee for each site is $270 to cover right-of-way access and attachment. Cities can recover additional funds if they perform a cost study, and Mr. Hadley may know more about that because he sat in on a seminar that discussed that. The issue is that unlike the larger cell towers, which go on people's private property, many of these are being placed in public right-of-way, so it's going to necessitate different zoning different regulations in order to for those wireless facilities. Staff recommends amending the current zone, bringing forward an ordinance or amendment to the ordinance to address wireless telecommunication facilities in public rights-of-way. The cities of Fargo, Bismarck, and Williston have already amended their zoning ordinances to address small cell wireless facilities and their placement in the public right-of-way. In fact, the city of Bismarck and Fargo both added ordinances that were separate from their telecommunication tower ordinance that just addressed placement of these in the public right-of-way. Potential zoning ordinance amendments would address different outward appearance depending upon placement in residential areas and non-residential areas, as well as on decorative lighting and historic structure. So this is just to introduce, make you familiar with this issue as staff comes forward in the future with potential code amendments for workshops and for discussion. And that's the end of the presentation. And we are here to answer questions, although many of them I will probably defer to Mr. Hadley. I've read a lot of stuff, but I think he has a little more knowledge about this than I do. Thank you.
Yeah, I sat through this at League of Cities a couple years ago. They had somebody come and talk about this. It's becoming a huge issue all over the country. So.
Mm-hmm.
I think the aesthetics part of it is the issue that's going to hit home with us, and then amending our fee schedule for something that's legal to do. So we will have a number of discussions with Attorney Wenko on what, before we come up with something formal.
And I think they told us if we fall outside these parameters, that the FCC set, they can just go do it, and we can't say nothing about it.
Yeah, they changed the rules a bit. So
Yeah, well, there was a big court case, what was it, about 2 years ago, a year ago, something like that? I was reading about that, where they basically, there were cities that challenged these as being too restrictive. And the court basically said, no, you're going to follow the FCC, what the FCC rules. And that's where they call it the shot clock. They call it the shot clock for installation of on existing facilities and installation on new poles. So they refer to that as the shot clock, and then the fees also were part of that ruling too.
Yeah. All right, commissioners, any questions regarding this issue for anyone? Okay, thank you, Mr.
Sure,
Joseph.
if you want any literature about this, I'll be happy to forward that.
All right,
Forward
appreciate it.
that on, probably the court case, I can dig that up and forward that on to you, because it kind of, the big concern is putting it in city, to me, the big concern is putting it in city right away, so,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to number 3 then. Update on our underground mining overlay district. And Mr. Josephson, looks like you're up again.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Friedrich, Commissioners. Earlier this year, Planning and Zoning staff had brought back some revised proposed underground mining ordinance for a public hearing. We had looked at some information that Public Works gave us. There were concerns about how this might impact their plans out at the landfill, and we went over that study and analyzed it, but we also made some other changes to it. The direction back in January that we got from the Planning and Zoning Commission was to take this to site plan review for discussion and consensus. This did go to site plan review on February the 23rd, and it was discussed, and there was consensus, and there were no further comments at that time. So we would like to bring that forward. We can either bring it forward for workshop or go straight to public hearing for this. So whatever direction you wish staff to go in.
Okay. Yeah, I think we've already discussed this pretty well in this group, so
Okay.
I think if you guys are ready to bring it to commission for approval, you could just take it straight to city commission, unless you guys have any other concerns, but.
Okay. All right,
Great.
thank you. We shall. First available.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Josephson. Anything else, commissioners? What's on your mind? Okay, if not, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Motion by Shirley, do we have a second?
Second.
Just all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.